All right, everybody, welcome to this edition of Friday with the Friars. My name is Brother Pius Gange.
I'm Father Luke Mary Fletcher.
And before we get started with today's topic, which I think you're really going to enjoy, we just want to encourage you to like, subscribe, and comment on this video if you enjoy it. Or I guess if you don't enjoy it, you can comment too if you want. But that helps the algorithm and will broaden the availability of this content for other people. So please like, subscribe, comment, and tell your friends. Get them to watch it too. So Father Luke, today...
Wait, before you get started.
Whoa.
Thank you, Brother Pius. I had this funny idea, which is obviously, I'm trying to be humorous here.
Yeah, go for it.
We could, we're in this Jubilee year of the Pilgrims of Hope, and I thought, wouldn't it be funny if we could offer an indulgence, like 500 days off purgatory, if you subscribe, 1,000 days off purgatory if you do a positive comment.
That's right.
If you do a negative comment, maybe you get to do an extra year in purgatory. Maybe we should ask the new Holy Father.
That's right.
Do that. Okay.
We could add that with all of the, potential penalties for your phone ringing when you're in Mass.
That's right. Oh. So brother, lead us off in today's topic.
Yeah, so, we were talking a little bit before this about just the sort of the presence of Jesus in the Eucharist as it relates to Our Lady of Fatima, and how the children had the apparition of the angel a year before Our Lady appeared to them.
So this is 1916.
1916.
This is a year before the Virgin Mary came.
Exactly.
And what happened?
So an angel appeared to the children actually 3 times. And the angel actually brought the Eucharist, a host and a chalice. And then the angel left the host and the chalice floating in the air and prostrated itself with the children, taught the children to pray these very Eucharistic-centered prayers, and then gave Holy Communion to all 3 of the children.
Oh, wow.
It's incredible.
And I think that was a detail that initially nobody knew about it, but later on when the church had asked Sister Lucia to put down in writing everything that happened, she comes out with this story, these 3 appearances of this angel who appeared as a young man made of water or crystal or light or of an ethereal angelic being, and the prayers he taught them.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they got to receive Holy Communion, which I think for Jacinta and Francisco, it might have been their first Holy Communion.
I think so.
And so praying and pondering over that, why did that happen? It seems like that the graces of the sacrament were there to prepare them for what was going to happen in 1917 when the Virgin Mary actually came to them.
Yeah.
So you see this kind of grace, even for children, receiving Holy Communion. The last 100 or so years, the church has kind of allowed younger children to receive their first Holy Communion because the graces that are so necessary. And but here's where it gets interesting, bro. So 1917, they have these 6 apparitions of the Virgin Mary, May 13th, all the way every month till October 13th. And then afterwards, they don't have continuous apparitions of Mary anymore, but they did have the Eucharist.
Yeah.
So the year before the apparitions, this supernatural experience with the angel bringing Holy Communion. And then after the apparitions were over, they had the regular sacramental prayer life, which includes getting to Holy Mass, receiving communion, and having a special devotion to Eucharistic adoration.
Yeah.
It's a real honor to have that here at Our Lady Shrine in New Jersey, where we are. We have adoration every day. And so maybe explain a little more about what that might mean in terms of their own spirituality.
Yeah, I think that there's a way in which the Eucharist was really central to the children's lives. Both before and especially during the apparitions of Our Lady, you can imagine, Our Lady appeared once a month, and I was thinking just how much they suffered as a result of being visionaries. Lucia, especially, her mother was kind of unbelieving, and it was very, very difficult for them. They actually received the grace of martyrdom. At one point, they were kidnapped by the police put in prison and threatened to be boiled alive. And each of the children were sort of taken out one at a time, and they thought that they were going to their death, which in some ways is actually the grace to give up your life for your faith, which is a tremendous grace. But then afterwards, and this is a point for me, I feel very, very moved and very close to this idea myself. All three children really devoted themselves to, as Francisco would say, consoling the hidden Jesus. You know, he would hide out, and actually, and this is not an encouragement to the children to do this, but he knew that he was going to die soon. And so he actually skipped school to spend time adoring Jesus, because he said, I don't need to go to school. I'm going to heaven, you know? And it's just so beautiful that both Jacinta and Francisco devoted themselves to prayer with Jesus and the Eucharist. I remember back in October when I was in Fatima, just how beautiful it was to go to their parish church and actually still have the tabernacle that Francisco would and Jacinta would adore Jesus in. So beautiful. And then Lucia, of course, would become a cloistered nun as a Carmelite, devoting herself to a life of constant prayer and sacrifice. And it's just so beautiful to see the centrality of the sacramental life of the church. You could think, you know, somebody has an apparition or something, that they would be sort of, maybe overly attached to the extraordinary.
Right.
But I think one of the things that's such a mark of authenticity is that they just devoted themselves to the ordinary life and ordinary means of grace that the church offers through the sacraments.
Wow, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And of course, accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
And even those stories of them in the aftermath of the apparitions, it's not even the host being exposed in a monstrance. Jesus is there in the tabernacle. There's a little candle. There's the sanctuary light. I would say the light is on somebody's home.
Yep.
And that little candle kind of represents the true presence of Jesus. And they were there. Francisco particularly had a contemplative vocation. It would be hours a day, praying, interceding, obviously praying the Rosary. Even Sister Lucia later on in life would say that the Rosary is a wonderful devotion to prepare for Holy Mass or to give thanksgiving after Holy Mass. That, you know, her understanding of the devotion of the Rosary, which is what Mary really asked for at Fatima and other places. And she even at Fatima called herself the Lady of the Rosary, that Sister Lucia and her writings did connect that to really the Eucharist, the Holy Mass, preparing yourself or thanksgiving after so that you could be more attentive to the graces of not only adoring the Lord, but, you know, what does it mean to receive him, to consume the Eucharist, you know, like the effect of that sacrament, you know, and the greater our disposition, the more graces are somehow activated or present, you know, whether you're not prepared and distracted and just you're checking a box versus like really intentionally going to the Holy Mass where you're really trying to participate. And what a great role model in these Fatima saints, you know, it's so beautiful. And thinking about that, I had this memory of my college days. So my undergrad, I went to Franciscan University of Steubenville, Ohio. And I know you went there 10 years after me. That's right. We're 10 years apart here. Who's older? Oh, no. Don't go there. But in Steubenville, they have this little stone chapel, which is a replica of the stone chapel that St. Francis himself literally rebuilt when he was starting the Franciscan order. And at the campus, that chapel is a Eucharistic adoration chapel. And of course, because it's a beautiful school, they have perpetual adoration. And years later, having conversations with other classmates who either went into the priesthood like I did, or even those who went into marriage, many of us kind of admitted that the graces of our discernment for our vocation really kind of was connected to that adoration chapel. It's like one of my friends said that like the cracks in the floor, you know, have the blood, sweat, and tears of many students who were begging the Lord for the grace, like, help me find my path in this life. You know, as they kind of sweating it out and kind of like wrestling with the Lord like Jacob in that chapel. And, you know, for myself as well, I can say my discernment of my vocation and ultimately led me to the friars and to the priesthood was intimately connected with that Eucharistic devotion. And so times I've been able to visit the campus, I love going back in there and just in Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite places, actually. Often when I'm praying, if I'm in a place that's really noisy, one of the places I'll sort of go back to in my mind is that chapel. It's so quiet and beautiful. And it kind of reminds me, too, the connection between the Rosary and the Eucharist. The majority of the content of the prayer, the Hail Mary, comes, at the Annunciation and at the Visitation, both moments of Our Lady's life when Jesus was present, body, blood, soul, divinity, in her womb.
Right.
And it's sort of a parallel that I like to think about in the same way that we receive Jesus in the Eucharist. He's inside of us as well. And so what a beautiful prayer to pray, to learn from Mary how to live a life centered on Jesus, aware of the presence of Jesus in our very flesh. And, I would say too, like my vocation came out of both, lots of holy hours during my time at Steubenville, but even in my high school days, my youth group would have these holy hours on Friday nights. And I remember so many times bringing all of my struggles, all of my joys, the questions about my discernment to the feet of Jesus in the Eucharist. And, it's such a wonderful sort of advertisement for the Lord's presence there. Just the way that he's just so available.
Right.
And we can lay at his feet our joys, our sorrows, and we can know that he's hearing us, and most especially that he's with us.
Right.
As a therapist, I've come to learn about human beings that one of the most important things that we can experience isn't necessarily easy answers to our questions. When we're suffering, or when we have joys, but especially I think when we're suffering, it's not so much that a person has the right answers for us, but that the person is present with us. And even for children, we talk about love languages as we get older, but I think the most fundamental experience of being loved for a child is that the people they love and who love them are present with them. And I think that Jesus shows us concretely just how important it is to have his presence with us, even if we don't have easy answers or solutions to the things we're going through, to know that the Lord is with us in that, especially in the Eucharist. It's just such a gift. I've known that in my own life. Difficult moments spent before the tabernacle. It's a consolation to know that Jesus is with us. He promises not to leave us orphans. And I know I've experienced that with his presence in the Eucharist.
Wow, that's such a great insight. It reminds me, we even have a little stone chapel here at Our Lady's Shrine in New Jersey, which is an exact replica of the Holy House of Loretto, which is, originally from Nazareth. It's the home of the Virgin Mary, where the Annunciation happened. Those blessed stones witnessed the incarnation. Of course, the walls are now in Italy, but one of the stones was sent here. So our chapel is a replica, also a relic. I love going in there. Of course, Jesus is present in the tabernacle once again in this holy space. And I always tell people, when you go in there, make sure you say at least one Hail Mary. Because it all started there. Mary's womb was the first tabernacle where the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. And then, of course, that extends now to the mystery of the Holy Eucharist, where he can be present. And certainly when we receive him in Holy Communion at Mass, there's those precious, intimate moments when he's there. But I think my appreciation for the gift of the Eucharist has been the clearest on the most difficult days. When there's something going on and there's a struggle, there's a cross to be carried or whatever. And we know God is everywhere and you can pray everywhere. And but yet the presence there is something kind of special. And I love it because you could say to Jesus, I know you're there. Even if I don't feel anything or, I don't. And then he's almost like they call the captive prisoner of the tabernacle. And he's there. But some of the saints have these beautiful meditations that when you come before Jesus in the Eucharist, just remember that he's been waiting for all eternity for this moment. That he's been waiting for you. And like, think about all the trouble you'd have to go through to gain an audience with somebody like a president or a king or a pope, and yet the Lord God, the King of Kings, is here, and he's granting you a private audience, and he's just waiting for you, longing for you, and that you that you would be touched by such a shocking humility and great love, whereas he's like saying to us, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here, Even when you travel to other countries and whatnot, you hear the Mass in other languages, or you find, where's the tabernacle? Where's the candle that's lit? But this beautiful gift that is there for all of us, that this was God's plan. And of course, the children of Fatima model that for us in such a beautiful way. Absolutely. So, well, thanks, bro. I always appreciate your perspective.
Thank you as well.
Okay.
Yeah, such a gift.
Okay, see you soon. God bless everyone.
God bless you.